Good morning, good afternoon, guys. Whenever it is that you're watching this, we are going to carry on with our book, Room 13. We're moving on to chapter 11. So we left Fliss in a bit of a quandary, wondering whether she really did get up in the night. Was there a voice from the room opposite her on the hallway? Did she in fact get up at all? There's a pool of water on the floor that suggests that she might have done, but could you have explained that away in another way? Could somebody have just got up in the morning and made that mess? So lots of questions about what is real and what is imagined. So they're off on a walk today. They're going up to Staithes, so we'll pick up the story from that point. Right, chapter 11. They spent an hour in Staithes, but nobody saw the ghost. They saw crab pots piled high by cottage doors and boats tied up in the creek. They stared at the dangerous cliff and tried to imagine what it would be like walking along quite normally one second and to have no head the next. They bought sweets and ice lollies and stood amongst their knapsacks and shoulder bags, chatting and watching the waves while the teachers had a cup of tea. At 11 o'clock, they picked up their bags and moved out, leaving the village by way of a steep, winding footpath which led to the cliff top and on out of sight. Mr. Hepworth said, "This is the part of the Cleveland Way, and it will take us to Runswick Bay. It's a 3-mile walk, more or less. About halfway we'll stop and eat our lunches. There's no tearing hurry, but do try and keep up. The paths run very close to the cliff edge in places, and if there are stragglers, it becomes difficult to keep an eye on everybody. Are you listening, John Phelan?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Off we go then." The sun was a fuzzy ball above the sea. Little white clouds sat racing across a rolling landscape of wheat field and meadow. Strung out in 2s and 3s along the track, the children walked and chattered. Gulls wheeled and soared or floated like scraps of paper on the water far below. A jet miles high drew a thin white line across the sky. So the language and the sentence structure so different from the end of the previous chapter. Very descriptive, much longer sentences. It makes us feel relaxed. It makes us feel like one of those days where we're at the seaside and enjoying a walk by the sea. So at this point, it's such a contrast between the worry that Fliss has at night and how much she enjoys the day. Lisa flung her arms out and laughed. "Lovely," she cried. "Don't you think it's lovely, Fliss? The smells and all this space?" Fliss nodded. "I was just thinking about the others, stuck in school having boring lessons, and us here enjoying ourselves." She looked at her watch. "We'd be in French now." "Do you have to mention that?" scowled Lisa. "Trying to spoil my day, I know." "No, I'm not. I think it makes it better, thinking about where you'd be if you weren't here. It makes you appreciate it more." "Yeah, well, I can appreciate it without having to think about French, thank you very much." "Are you still bothered about that dream, by the way?" Fliss looked at her friend. Now who's trying to spoil whose day? She thought for a while. "No, I'm not worried. Not at the moment, not here. It's like I told you, in broad daylight, all that sort of stuff seems daft. You say to yourself, it was just a dream, and you believe it. It's when you're in bed at night and everything's quiet that you start wondering." I can really relate to that. I can relate to having bad dreams and at night them feeling so real and so vivid, and however ridiculous the dream seemed, and however whatever the content of my dream was, how beyond possible that might have been. At night I would be terrified, and yet during the day when it was light and I was busy, it seemed silly, but at night time so different, so real. Anyway, I don't want to think about that. What was that kind of bird? She pointed. The black one with a grey head. I've seen a few of them today. Lisa shrugged. I don't know. I'm no good at birds. Ask Mrs. Evans. Fliss looked behind. Where is Mrs. Evans? I thought she was walking at the back. She was. We must have been going too fast for her or something. Either that or she's fallen off the cliff. Anyway, you could just ask Mrs. Murray instead. She's just up there. Fliss giggled. You mean it doesn't matter if Mrs. Evans had fallen into the sea because she's not the only one who can identify birds? No, I never said that. Anyway, she wouldn't have fallen, would she? We've left her behind, that's all. She hasn't kept up, like old Hepworth said. I wonder if he'll make her write an apology. Willie, heck. Do you think we should tell somebody? Can if you want. Mrs. Marriott's just up there. Fliss put on a spurt, swerved past Helen Smith and Robert Field and touched the teacher's shoulder. Miss? Mrs. Marriott turned her head. What is it, Felicity? We can't see Mrs. Evans, miss. She was at the back and now she's disappeared. We thought we should mention it, miss. Mrs. Marriott looked back over the quarter mile or so of track, so quite some distance they've walked, that they can see she's not there. Mrs. Marriott looked back over the quarter mile or so of track which was visible from where they were standing. Children passed them, leaving the path to do so. Thank you, Felicity. Didn't you catch up with Mr. Hepworth? Tell him I sent you and ask him to stop the walk. She's probably just fallen behind, but I think we ought to wait for her. Yes, miss. She set off along the track, weaving in and out among her classmates. One or two called after her, demanding to know where she thought she was going or what the rush was, but she ignored them, going at a steady jog and keeping her eyes on Mr. Hepworth. She was still a couple of 100 metres behind him when he stopped and looked back. She waved and shouted, "Sir! Sir!" And to her relief, he raised his hand, halting the column, and stood watching her approach. "What is it, Felicity?" he asked, as she came panting up to him. She told him, and he shaded his eyes with his hands, peering back the way they'd come, so he's looking over his shoulders if he can kind of catch a glimpse of where they might be. Well, she's nowhere in sight. Probably twisted an ankle or something and fallen behind. We'll wait here a minute or two, and if she doesn't show up, I'll go back and have a look. I'm just going to pause there just to get you to reflect on what you think might have happened. Do you think it's just the case that she has twisted her ankle? Do you think there might be something more suspicious? What do you think has happened? I'm going to leave you to ponder on that one, and then we'll pick up the rest of the chapter in a minute.